Hi, everyone. Well, when I left my big job at HSBC to go and start a life insurance company, pretty much everybody told me I was crazy. I thought it was more a bit optimistic than crazy, but it turns out that in the art of capital raising, you need quite a lot of crazy, but an even more amount of optimistic. But more than that, nobody ever raised capital with a stupid idea. You need to have a great story to be able to raise great capital. Singlife had a great story. Chocolate Finance has an even better story. But what's most important is that your story has to be so powerful that when you're going to talk to capital and partners and investors, you need to be able to tell a story where your investors need to be wanting to buy your product first before they invest in your business. Businesses and stories sell things to people to make the world better that people want. We have to develop things that people need and that are going to be beneficial to the world, that your company is there to make the world a better place, not just build a better product than the guy next door or a more efficient this or a more efficient that. People need to buy something that they really want and will use. The next ingredient in capital raising is about making sure that the people around you can support you. I've been incredibly lucky to work with fantastic people, both in the Singlife story and in the chocolate story. We built great things with great people that believed in the vision of what we were trying to do. This idea, this cult of what we were building had to inspire the entire organization to get us where we needed to get to. But in capital raising, there is an unsung hero in all of these things. In business, when we succeed, we get to talk to our team members and our investors and our business partners and share all of the successes that we have. But actually, there's always somebody at home, a spouse, who never always gets to share in the good side, the positives. But every single bad time that you go through, they are there. And I've been really lucky to have a fantastic wife, Cindy, who's supported me all the way through. I couldn't have done it without her. Anyway, so with these ingredients around raising capital, I set off to raise money, and I ran into a problem straight away because I needed to raise $50 million. $50 million to start a new life insurance company. And I realized that in order to get money, most investors want to see a business that has revenue. And in my case, in order to have revenue, I needed to have a license. And in order to get a license, I needed to have capital. And in order to get capital, I needed to have revenue, and in revenue, I needed to get a license, and a license needed to get capital, and it was stuck, right? The second big problem I had was in talking to all of the various investors that you have out there, you get different kinds of investors, and what I needed a big investor. I needed $50 million. I needed an investor that was fluent in financial services, and I needed an investor who understood and was willing to invest in startups or new greenfield things. And the intersection of those three capital buckets turned out to be very, very, very small and a really tough thing to do. So where did I begin? Of course, naturally, you think I'm an insurance guy. I'm building an insurance company. Surely, if I built an insurance business and I could get a big insurance company to invest in my digital insurance company, if it works well, they can assimilate it into their business. And if it doesn't work well, then they haven't contagion is protected, right? You'd think that that'd be a logical starting point. No, it wasn't. It turns out that most people that work in traditional insurance industries are arrogant, egotistical, bureaucratic, difficult people that struggle. I remember a story once after having done about 4 months of due diligence with a bunch of teams. And I flew my entire group of my team up to Hong Kong to go and re-demonstrate our business in front of the group CEO. And after another 2 hours of presentation, I showed them all the color of my underpants, had the discussion, and the CEO said to me, he said, "Walter, this is fantastic. Love it." Then he turned to his CIO on his left-hand side and his CIO on his right-hand side, and he said, "Guys, we are ABC Insurance Company. Why can't we build this?" And then he said, "Walter, this is fantastic. We can't invest in you, unfortunately, but do you want to have a job and come and work for us?" And you can imagine my response. I remember another time working with another insurance company that had partnered up with a private equity firm, and they saw the Singlife story as an ability to enhance credit ratings. and we had a structure where I had actually signed a deal to fund it, the whole lot, but it was contingent on a certain solution being put in place. In fact, when I signed that deal, I had the first glass of alcohol I'd had in 6 months, because as a founder, I decided at the time I was not going to drink until I had funded the business. And at that time, it was a great excuse to have a first glass of champagne. Anyway, signed the deal, solved the solution, got the credit enhancement piece in place. At the end of the day, the guy said, oh, that's fantastic. That's a great solution. We don't really need to buy you anymore because you've solved the problem for us. We'll just replicate the solution. And oh, by the way, don't you want to come and work for us? Moving on from life insurance companies, moved to private equity firms. They were fantastic, but they all had the same fundamental problem. They could not deal with startups. Private equity is great. The people are fantastic. They are some of the most open and contributing people you'd meet. But I really struggled. But what they really did help me with was to always introduce me to somebody else. And that was another thing on the raising capital is whenever you have a discussion with somebody, never leave without a reference to talk to somebody else, because everybody knows everybody, and somebody will eventually get there to help you. I then moved on to family offices, and then you get to this part of the capital raising process is where you're starting to realize that investors are all different, and you have to actually be quite picky about who you get as your investor, because your investor, once they're invested, you are married, right? You are connected, and especially if they have a substantial share, you're bound. I remember once dealing with a private family who this gentleman had made billions of dollars doing gaming businesses in China, and who was interested in investing in financial services in Singapore, and we had done a deal again, lots of due diligence, colors of the underpants, but final contract signing. And his lawyers at the very last minute put in a little clause that said, if you as the founder disobey a direct instruction from the chairman, you are removed for cause. And I said, of course, hell no, never going to happen, not in a million years. And which then the whole deal fell over and I couldn't recover. In fact, I'm very happy that I couldn't recover because I wouldn't have wanted to work for that guy anyway. But these are the stories that we go through as founders. We got there in the end. Singlife took 3 years to get funded. 3 years of pain, heartache. We sold our cars. We moved to cheaper accommodation. We went through struggles. I told my wife it would take 1 year. It took 3. It took a really long time. We got there. Chocolate took 3 months. Chocolate was a completely different story. Chocolate went through another much easier way of doing things. And the way we raised money on chocolate was I put a post on LinkedIn and I said, guys, I've done a great job at Singlife and I'm looking for I'm going to be moving on to something new. Watch this space. And of course, I got a couple of calls the next day, and 3 months later, chocolate was funded. So the art of capital raising is quite simple. Well, it's quite hard, quite complicated, but there are two extremes. On the one side, you can put in every ounce of your blood, sweat, tears, soul, energy, resources, family, life, passion, energy, time, whatever you've got, you throw it in and you can make it work. The Singlife story. Or you can be a repeat founder and have another great story. The only thing that's in common between the two journeys that I went through was one thing. If you have a great story and can get people to follow you behind that particular vision, not only can you raise capital, but you can build great teams, you can build great customers, you can build communities, all because you've got people to engage around one unifying idea, one need, one passion, one central focus of what your business is going to do. And that was my story, and I hope that's useful to all of you. Thanks very much.